Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Sean Lavana. I'm here from Cloud Academy, and I'm joined by Jermaine Hernandez. Lots to cover today in a short amount of time, but just as we're kicking everything off today and as everybody's coming in, if you can hear me loud and clear, if you would not mind typing into the question box where you're listening in from. It's always fun to see that, and it lets me know that you guys can hear everything clearly. So just chat in where you're calling in from or where you're listening in from, and we'll get underway here in a minute. All right, awesome. I'm seeing Boston, I'm seeing Texas, I see Sweden, Denver, California, lots of people from all over today, and those are still rolling in. So thank you, everybody, for entering those. Like I said at the top, I'm Sean. I'm joined today by Jermaine. We're excited to talk to you today about a brand new offering from Cloud Academy, and it's pre-hire assessments, or knowing the true tech skills of your next hire. And we'll talk today today's webinar. We'll kind of cover the why, like why did we head down this way, and what the value of understanding the tech skills of somebody in your hiring pipeline is. And then we'll get into the how. And during that time, we'll also walk you through a demo of what this could look like for you and answer any questions that you might have. Like I said, we'll do our best to answer everything live today on today's webinar, but we do only have 30 minutes. So if we can't get to everything, we will certainly follow up with you afterwards. But type your questions into the question box as they come up. And just so everybody's clear, we are also recording today's webinar, and we'll send a copy of that out as soon as it's available afterwards. All right, so moving into today's agenda, here's what we're looking to cover. The hiring process, which like we talked about is the why, how you can ensure or better ensure that you're making the right hires, why pre-hire assessments help with that. We'll do a quick demo and then we'll answer any questions. So let's dive into that first part though, which is the hiring process. And this is the why, right? This is something that all of us, pretty much anybody who has a job can relate to. And it tends to go something like this, right? There's typically stages to this process that we all more or less formally or informally follow. And it's something like this. It's something like you do all your research, you get a connection into the company, and you get that phone screen, right? And guess what? That phone screen went well. Step one's done, right? Now what? The tech screen. And this is one of my favorite stages because everything here is fair game. Everything from straightforward questions that are like, hey, tell me about a time that you've implemented X, to, for example, how much oxygen is in the atmosphere? These are all kind of okay to ask at this stage, which is interesting. And as this breadth implies, as this variety of questions implies, these types of interviews, and actually both of these steps so far, tend to be prone to bias. They're often inconsistent and really difficult to measure. But all right, nonetheless, you've done great. You've been able to identify that the Earth's atmosphere is made up of approximately 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. It gets thinner the higher you go up. So you've deduced from there and showed them at least your thinking process for it. You're on to the next round, or potentially rounds, of escalating interviews with more senior managers. And maybe, just maybe during this time, you talk with somebody outside of the department. Things continue to go well. You're doing great. You make it all the way up to the tech challenge, AKA time to break out that whiteboard. And let's just pause here for a minute because I'm going to throw a stat out, and this is something I find super interesting. On the company side, as a company trying to hire somebody, you've just spent countless time with multiple candidates to get this far. The methods of getting to know the candidates that we've covered, so just in that last slide, resumes, interviews, multiple rounds of that, they typically don't yield the best insight. And that can play to the candidate's advantage. That's exactly what this shows right here, right? The research indicates that up to 78% of applicants misrepresent themselves. And interviews like the ones we just covered, especially unstructured ones, are subjective and ultimately serve as poor predictors of how somebody will ultimately perform in a job. You have different levels of interview training, typically within your company, different levels of people throwing their own personal bias into it, saying like, hey, I'm cool, and this person's like me, so they're cool too. Different people just going with their gut, saying somebody's a cultural fit or not. all of these things that can affect a job candidate's prospects. And nothing so far that we've talked about is concrete. Nothing that we're deciding the fate of this candidate on is really something that we can measure and more accurately determine their strengths and weaknesses. And one last number that I just want to share here, which I just shared, 78% misrepresent themselves. 66% of hiring managers don't care. They don't care that candidates have misrepresented themselves. So we've all kind of accepted that the best we're going to do is misrepresent ourselves during an interview process, and others will be okay with it. That's the charade we kind of engage with, right? That's where we're at. But maybe there's another way. That's what got us thinking about this. Another way to get a non-biased, more accurate depiction of somebody's tech strengths and weaknesses. And a more modern solution for that whiteboard test that we paused on, right? Something that we can do even before potentially investing a ton of time, all these times that we spend in all these different rounds of interviews. And that's what led us to build pre-hire assessments. That's what they're all about. Validated pre-hire assessments are a more reliable and objective method of getting key tech-related strengths and weaknesses on candidates. And it keeps the measurements consistent across the pool of applicants. And you can use the information gathered here, not only to say where somebody's strong and where they might need some additional help, but to actually make more defensible, more informed hiring decisions as well. And not only that, but when you hire a candidate and you know where their strengths and weaknesses are, you can use this just to begin their onboarding then. Say, for example, somebody's really good at AWS, but needs help in multi-cloud environments. Well, you tailor that training to them. You kind of skip over the AWS stuff and really go multi-cloud. Or you can have a learning path waiting for them with what you want them to learn as they start and with what they've identified as weaknesses, where they need to improve. And that's all just ready at the outset. So you can get them up to speed faster on your specific technology, your processes, what you use in your tool chain, and then train them with more precision thanks to this knowledge that you're garnering about them early on. And just like everything else here at Cloud Academy, pre-hire assessments are customizable. You can pull from our library of more than 600 assessments and combine those with what makes sense for your environment and your rules. And you can tailor what's there to get even more specific skill and knowledge. And this is just kind of a throw everything at you sampling of the skills and the technologies that we can assess. Again, more than 600 labs and quizzes and exams go into this, and Jermaine will explain more of that, but it's across all these variety of topics. And again, all of this can be customized to your instance. And all of this so that you can stand out with candidates in your hiring process with transparency. What this allows you to do is improve your transparency and your efficiency so that you're only talking to those with the strengths that you need. And so you can reduce costs here in the end, right? That's what we're looking at. You want to be able to say to a candidate, I understand your skills, you understand your skills, they can see the results of this as well. You find somebody that has the right skills for the, or the right possibility of skills for the job that you're hiring for. You're able to get this done more quickly, less bias, faster, more defense or hiring decisions, and then the cost savings in the end, right? When somebody turns over, especially if it's early on, there's a whole bunch of costs that get absorbed with that, not to mention backfilling that and having somebody else ramp up. So understanding where somebody's at and what that means within your organization is a hugely valuable thing that generally makes your hiring process more easier, more defensible, and more affordable. And what this lets you do generally is just hire the best possible fit faster, right? That's why we think about these in the context that we do. There's a whole pool of candidates out there. I could go into all the stats that cite how hard it is to find really good candidates generally right now, much less, with the specific skills that, the unicorn skills that we might typically look for in some organizations. So understanding more quickly who has those strengths and who might not, and who might be able to develop into something, lets you get to that best fit faster. And that's the whole point of this. So I'm going to turn it over to Jermaine now to kind of walk this through this high level in more detail. And he's going to bring up his instance and walk you through how this works.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Sean. So, hey, everyone. Yeah, as Sean mentioned, my name is Jermaine Hernandez, and I'm a senior sales engineer here with Cloud Academy. Before we even jump into this, I always like to remind all of you, my job is to answer your questions. So please help keep me employed. Throw those questions into the chat. We're going to do our best to get those answered and make sure we get you all the information you need. So thanks to Sean for showing us the why this piece of technology is so valuable. I am very incredibly excited to show you the how. How can we truly test these practitioner level skills to get the key end users and candidates into our workforce? So from a high level, I wanted to very briefly introduce you to the onboarding process for an administrator. It's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. From there, I wanted to give you a clear understanding of what candidates would see as they onboard. Then we can talk all about the results and the type of analysis that we're going to get to do. So let's go ahead and get started. So what you're currently seeing is our administrative panel for our Acme pre-hire company. So we really have two approaches to getting this off of the ground. First is the piecemeal order, pardon me. We can begin by inviting users. To that end, just wanted you to know, all you really need is a first name, last name, and an email, and a user can be onboarded into the platform. After we've invited the users, we can then create teams. This is really going to be the appropriate candidate pool that you can throw them into. And lastly, we would assign the assessment. Otherwise, we can do it all in one clean flow directly from our pre-hire tab. So if I come in here to create a pre-hire assessment, I can create the appropriate candidate pool name, very likely by title. And at step 2, we're already selecting the appropriate baseline assessments. So as Sean mentioned, these really come in two formats. The first is a written exam. Now all of our exams existing within our library are actually public facing in order to be leveraged for this pre-hire motion. So you're going to have available to you over 500 different text-based assessments. In addition to that, one of the things that sets us apart is going to be our lab challenges. Now, Cloud Academy offers a variety of labs. So very important to note, we offer guided labs as you're learning. So this will include screenshots and detailed instructions on how to complete various tasks. What makes this a lab challenge is that this is a completely unguided environment. We are either asking the end user to get from A to Z successfully with no help, or we're presenting them with a problem which requires them to troubleshoot. In either case, to be clear, they're going to be leveraging Cloud Academy credentials to access a real environment. This is what we mean by that true test of practitioner level skills. So after you've selected the appropriate pre-assessments, you're then ready to assign them. So we just need to give this a test name, a candidate test. And at step 3, you can either invite members if you haven't invited them, or simply search and add them to this team. So that is all it takes to get your candidates into this platform. Now let's talk about what it looks like for end users. So end users will receive an email invitation, and this is the onboarding dashboard that they land on. So all they need to do is generate a password. And upon entering the platform, I am immediately met with my onboarding dashboard. So we go immediately from sign up, directly to testing your skills. Here we'll see a list of the different pre-assessments that may have been assigned. You can assign as many as you'd like, and by default, they will come with a week to complete these pre-assessments. So from here, when we're ready to get these completed, we click on Start. Our text-based exams look and feel similarly, whether it's a pre-assessment, an ongoing assessment, or a final assessment. So we get to select our answers, select 1, select 2, select 3. We will get a chance to revisit any skipped questions before submitting. I'll go ahead and submit, knowing full well that I probably didn't really stand out within this exam. And as you can see here, we give them a high-level understanding of what skills were assessed, along with how they did within this assessment itself, along with what their answer review looks like. In this case, if I had assigned a lab, I would then be directed to the lab environment as it is in this case. Then I can click on Start once more. And in case you are unfamiliar with our challenge labs or labs in general, one of the beautiful things about our labs is they have what we call validation checks. We bridge the environment between our labs and the console environment. So we actually run a validation check to confirm whether or not they were successful with what was expected. And of course, as I mentioned, one of the key things that makes us unique in this space is that they will be leveraging our credentials to access a real environment at no additional cost to you. This is all included in the cost of a license. The environment itself can take a second to spin up here. So after submitting this final assessment, your end users will be met with a thank you, and you will be contacted from your company and then be redirected to a typical end user dashboard. So it does look like a couple of questions are coming in. So let me take a quick look at those. So the first question is, what are the licensing requirements? Sean, do you want to help me out with this one?
Yeah, sure thing. So the way we look at that right now, I'm sorry, give me 1 second. I just have to pull down my presentation. Is on a monthly basis, and but annualized. So what we look at is the number of assessments that you think you'll do a month, and we kind of price it out based on that. So 30 assessments a month, 100 assessments a month, and then we can be flexible with any kind of arrangement in the middle. But 30 assessments a month for a year is an affordable $2,100, and then 100 assessments a month over the year is $6,000. And so we're looking to keep this as something that's hopefully very competitive and gives you the knowledge that you need to be able to hire the right people and get them off to a good start at your organization.
Awesome, thanks for that, Sean. So I see another question. Do you offer any personality profile related questionnaires? The answer to that question is no, but in all reality, nothing is keeping us from bringing in any custom questions that you might have to get this kind of understanding from these candidates. We can talk more about customization here at the end, but that would have to be a customized baselining assessment.
Yeah, I would just add that, I mean, we try to keep this focus kind of on the more hard quantifiable tech skills, which is the area that we know best. But to your point, these things can be added in and customized as needed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I have another question here that's going to be a phenomenal transition. So what is your recommendation for establishing a baseline for new hires in relation to those already working at the company? So this is one of the most beautiful things about our platform. Today, and for years, we have been helping companies and our clients understand skill gaps that exist within their current workforce. So when you're leveraging these pre-assessments at an enterprise level for existing hires, that is the context that we're going to provide to you. You tested your security engineers. This is where the skill gaps exist. However, through the pre-hire motion, the results that are presented need to be a little bit different for a different level of understanding. So let's take, for example, cross-vendor applicants. Perhaps we have a multi-vendor cloud project, so we're taking the best of both AWS and Azure. So we're testing both of those fundamental skills within this candidate pool. As soon as I jump into this candidate pool, I'm going to be able to see which end users are already really standing out, along with how the candidates pool as a whole is performing. I can still see that a user here is in progress, but when I jump into the completed tab, now we're seeing the individual user assessment scores. So although in this case, Ryan is really standing out, we really need to understand the context versus the candidate pool. And that's going to be the key difference. For our ongoing enterprise, we're going to understand the skill gaps for the pool as a whole. And in this case, we're going to understand an individual user compared to the rest of that pool. Let me show you what I mean. So Ryan here is looking quite promising, did very, very well on these assessments. When I click on view results, Here's where I'm seeing the initial spider graph for his top skills. You'll see in the blue where his skills are lying, and in the light gray is going to be the average scores. Over on the right-hand side, we're going to get to see the individual assessment scores, along with seeing whether or not they did the best. I can also click into these assessments to get a high-level understanding of how the applicant responded. So if you're curious to see which questions they got wrong and how they answered it, we can help provide that context. But most importantly, if we scroll down, we're actually going to see a breakdown by overall platform or by platform domains, in this case for both AWS and Azure, where the blue is showcasing me the average achieved score and the green is showing me where Ryan landed. So Ryan here has been an all-star. You can see that he's achieved the best results in a number of categories, except a couple here. But especially when it comes to baselining new hires or those already existing, this is going to help ensure that you're hiring the person that's coming with the strengths that you might need today, plus helping you understand which skills you might want to focus on for that more pointed training as Sean was recommending. So another question came in here. Do you give them a week? Oh, do you have to give them a week or can you give less time? Currently out of the box, they'll have a week, but each individual assessment is timed depending on the length. So just to show you here very quickly. So even though the candidates might have a week to complete it, you can see here in the duration, the maximum allowed time for each one of these written exams. Some are very intentionally kept shorter for a quick baselining or a more pointed skill that you're testing for. The lab environments tend to be a little bit longer in duration. So this is asking, are there also non-vendor assessments? Absolutely. You might need to be testing your end users or your candidates within DevOps, within a specific programming language. So in all reality, our library is public facing. So you can go to our library whenever you'd like at cloudacademy.com/library and take a look at all of the really high-end content that we offer. And lastly, just because it's worth re-mentioning, please do not forget, Content Engine is what's going to allow you to provide customized testing and context even before they're employees at your company. If you want us to mirror a particular tech stack to customize a hands-on lab environment, to really get that feeling of your production environment, that's something we can help with. If there's a particular way that you use some technologies, we can generate specific questions for your use case and throw them into an exam. And now we have not only a custom exam, but a custom hands-on lab assessment. I really wanted to emphasize that because that is incredibly important and valuable throughout this process. So there is one more question here. Sean, you might be able to help me with this one. Do you have partner or reseller opportunities?
Yeah, thanks, Jermaine. Yeah, if we we do. If you want to shoot me an email, it's probably the easiest way. My email or follow up with me after this is Shawn, SHAWN.LAVANA@cloudacademy.com, and I'll introduce you to the right people for that.
Awesome, thanks, Sean. But yeah, that's all I had. So Sean, I'm going to stick around in case more questions pop up, but over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jermaine. I think there was one, and I think this one just came in again, but it was, are there non-vendor assessments? But I think that's what you were just covering, right? Which is you can, any of the that slide I displayed, and I can bring it back up here in a second. Let me just go to that. That has any of the technologies, any of the topics, any of those kind of bullet points at the bottom. There is all the things we covered. Obviously, the cloud providers as well, which is the vendors, but any of the technology topics or those specific in the bottom. Anything else you'd add to that, Jermaine?
No, that's perfect. I just once more remind them, this is public facing our library. We're proud of our content, so go take a look at your earliest leisure.
Yeah, good call. If you want to, yeah, I know you read that off. If you don't mind, just maybe throwing that into the chat, cloudacademy.com/library. You can see everything there, and it's all publicly available to your point. All right. Well, I think that's it for all questions today. Really appreciate everyone's time on this. If you have follow-up questions, I just gave my email address out, or we will be following up with a link to this recording. You can feel free to reply to that as well. If there are any other questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you very much for your time. We'll see you again soon.